We see genocide, we see mass graves, we see war crimes. Russia can do this for a decade. Ukraine can do this for months.
We seem to be repeating all of the lessons we didn't learn in the end of World War II.
It's the worst that humans can do to each other, and we've perfected our ability to kill each other. I don't want to go back to war, and I surely don't want my children to have to fight in another one.
The day some teacher come in and start telling my sons that are 5 and 6 that, you know, the man's having the baby and stuff, like, I'm pulling them. I'm taking them out.
You can have the freedom to have those own thoughts and those own opinions, but you don't get to tell me what to think. And I know that biologically, we got 2 genders. And I don't care what you think you are. You can believe that, and I'll respect that, and I'll treat you like a human, but you do not get to project that onto me or my family as to what my freedoms need to be. We won't let them buy alcohol in the United States until they're 21. They're not allowed to vote until they're 18, but they can make a decision about permanently mutilating their body. I've never seen America so divided in my lifetime. Divided over the dumbest stuff. We are divided over the dumbest things right now as we're looking at World War III, where we're losing ground to China, while we have our southern border that is currently being invaded by absolutely everybody on the planet. But then we're arguing over about a rainbow on a beer can. Wake up, America.
Isn't it crazy how some people didn't actually read the Twitter files? I mean, they did a nice news media blackout on that.
Google, LinkedIn, PayPal, they froze people accounts, they demonetized people, they froze bank accounts. That's the power that they have. And they're all coordinating in it, and you can read about it, or you can live in ignorance.
You got some hard lessons early on that you were fucking up your life.
There were times where I knew what the right thing was, but I just didn't do it. I didn't do it because I was a coward. I did it because I was lazy. I did it because I was a selfish, entitled little prick. I'm gonna change this about myself. To be a better father, to be a better man, to be a better husband, to be a better employer, to be a better soldier, just to be a better human.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Tim Kennedy, the former professional mixed martial artist, Green Beret, and serial entrepreneur. You served as a Green Beret sniper in the Special Operations Detachment and toured in Iraq and Afghanistan. In the Army, you were deployed to Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and were an honored graduate from Ranger School. For your service, you were given the Bronze Star Medal, awarded for valor under fire. In your first fight in the UFC, you defeated Roger Gracie via unanimous decision and earned wins against Michael Bisping and Robbie Lawler to hold an MMA record of 18 wins in 24 fights. You are the founder of Sheepdog Response, a tactical training and self-defense company, and the Apogee Academy, an online mentorship program with the goal of turning curious children into the leaders of tomorrow. Today, you are concerned about our right to freedom of speech and believe that big tech's continued censorship will set a dangerous precedent that could potentially lead to violence and anarchy. Tim, welcome back to London Real.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you for everything you always do and say. I appreciate your use of freedom of speech.
As yours as well. And I follow you on Instagram, and I'm constantly watching the stuff that you put out, at least the stuff that I get to see on that feed, because I'm sure a lot I miss because of the algos. But, there's so many things I want to talk to you about today, because there's probably 6 really strong points that you're constantly speaking out about. And I'd love to jump into it. I actually wanted to maybe start with Ukraine, because it feels like you have such a nuanced perspective of that war. I know you've been there. I know you believe fights against communism are just, but you also disagree when people want to throw our kids into wars that maybe they don't understand or aren't doing the right way. So I've seen a lot of your different tweets, pictures of you and your son. Let's jump into it. How do you unpack your feelings about what we're doing in Ukraine right now?
Yeah, Yeah, as much as I hate communism, I hate war as much, and I don't think these things are mutually exclusive, and I think some people, when you're looking at, especially social media, which is a really difficult place to have nuanced conversation, forget that these are very complex topics. Can I, as a father, want to keep my son out of war, all the while want to fight against communism? Absolutely, right? And there's degrees about how to have these conversations. I've worked in Ukraine as part of Save Our Allies, a humanitarian organization that was going to the front lines to deliver humanitarian aid. We evacuated an incredible journalist, Benji Hall. His book Stave just came out, and everyone in his car died but him, and we were able to get him from Ukraine into Poland, flying from Poland to Germany, where he got emergency medical care that saved his life. So I have seen firsthand what communism does to a country. I have seen it rot with corruption. And so, of course, I hate that. But having worked in Ukraine and seen also the waste, the fraud, and the us inching closer and closer to World War III, can we, sit and debate? Can we find resolutions outside of war? Can we hold a firm line of saying, no, these were sovereign state lines. It was illegal that you came into this country. This is not your land. This is Ukrainian land. And figure out ways that does not involve World War III with China, Iran, Syria, and Russia. And having coming out of 20 years at war, I don't want to go back to war, and I surely don't want my children to have to fight in another one.
You said you went to the front line and saw mass graves and stuff, and I mean, I still have a hard time understanding that it's like really close to us over here. You got a hot war where we seem to be repeating all of the lessons we didn't learn in the end of World War II. I mean, what was it like there?
I mean, it's the worst that humans can do to each other, and what perfected our ability to kill each other. It is void of any form of humanity. I was at a battalion of Ukrainian soldiers, of infantrymen at the front lines. There was this tiny cellar, not even a cellar. It's like a well of canned goods that was all the food that they had for an entire battalion. They were rotating guys from the front lines back to Kyiv to get medical care, to then be shipped back to the front lines. You had baristas and mechanics that were stepping over trenches as if it was World War I in trench warfare. Trench warfare is uniquely horrible. And that's what they're doing in a lot of those front lines right now. It's heartbreaking to see us, I say us, the human race, doing this to each other over land. But it's also inspiring to see the leaders and the courage of some of these Ukrainian soldiers that are fighting to protect their family and their homeland. Again, another really nuanced thing. A lot of, as kind of a libertarian constitutionalist in the United States, me just saying anything nice about anyone in Ukraine, people are like, oh, he's a neocon. No, he's pro-war. This guy is like, no, that's not what I'm saying. Even in war, there are beautiful moments of humanity and courage. And I saw that on display of men and women protecting their homeland and fighting fiercely to protect what they view as to be their rightful sovereign country.
Yeah, it's been impressive the way they defended it. And I know they've been funded and supported, but it's still, it's been surprising for everybody. What do you make of some of the atrocities committed by the Russian side? Do you chalk some of that up to like really green, really young soldiers, not well trained, a propaganda war? Or is that just what happens in war, where just the worst comes out in people?
No, I mean, America wants to fight this big maneuver war, the war of World War II, right? The war of tanks and battleships and, large brigades and battalions in movement. Unfortunately, that's not the war that we're ever going to fight again. The war that we're going to fight moving forward is, again, it's a proxy war. It's a war against corporations. It's a war against ideas and propaganda. It's information. It's it's war of evil and genocide and name calling and blames. And that's what we see in Eastern Ukraine right now. You see genocide, and effectively, if they can't own the land, they can erase the ideas, and you erase the ideas by killing the people. So you see, these Russian schools that are opening up in Eastern Ukraine that are teaching that Ukraine doesn't even exist. They're already teaching this next generation of they're on sovereign Ukrainian land, but their Russian school is being taught by Russians that Ukraine doesn't even exist. And that's the battle of these ideas, and that's the mass graves. There's lots of them. They've already confirmed multiple war crimes all throughout Ukraine, of them killing entire villages, of them destroying garages and burying people underneath it. It's just absolutely horrible.
And then now you've got these drones. Is it weird to see that? Because I don't know if we ever saw an evolution where there was, maybe we did, maybe you did, where there were these like Iranian drones going against civilians in Ukraine, and it just seems like a bad dystopian future.
Yeah, I mean, we're in it. We're so comfortable. I'm in Austin, Texas right now. It's 75 degrees outside. I'm about to drive up north into the hill country, and the contrast of just a few weeks ago when I was in Eastern Europe, seeing people scared and seeing the hollow underneath their eyes of sleepless nights, knowing that, if you're between the ages of 16 and 45, you're going to be drafted. And, feeling, if you go to Poland right now, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Slovakia, these people are in, where's the next front line, right? It's Ukraine right now. Had they been successful, had the invasion gone the way the Russians had wanted, are we looking at Poland being the next country to be invaded? Was Slovakia next? Obviously they own Belarus. It's Belarusia right now. So the geopolitical climate there, when you start getting to Eastern Europe, it is, and if you've ever been to Kyiv, it's a beautiful first world city. It's a metropolis. It's the cobblestones and architecture that looks like you're in Spain, that looks like you're in Madrid. And then you see buildings that have been destroyed and machine gun fire and bullet holes in the sides of walls. They try to go and clean it up and fix it immediately, but some things, especially some of the historical buildings, that's just damage and scars that are going to be there forever. And that was from an invasion a year and 2 months ago. It's really difficult to process being in a first world city like that, being in a proper European city, and realizing that it was under Russian warfighters' control 1 year ago.
Yeah, you said it had an opera house. I think the point you were making was like this is not a city that was used to seeing this type of warfare, and then that's what was happening. How does this end, Tim?
And the Russians view this as a strategic fight that has to be won, because they view NATO as a assault on their sovereign security. So as NATO has been expanding and new countries have been going into it, Ukraine was on that short list pre-invasion, and there is a resolution within NATO that you can't join while you're at war, which they are. Finland, Czech Republic, Poland, all these being recent additions to NATO. Russia sitting there, if you just juxtaposition, switch your perspective to being Russian, you're sitting there in Moscow and you watch what was, what the NATO Atlantic that has slowly moved east and east and east and east. Now there's only one country buffering you from NATO, and they view NATO as aggressors. Of course you want to go in there and protect your own sovereign border, and you do that by invading. So from the Russian perspective, this makes total sense. But for the rest of the world, we see genocide, we see mass graves, we see war crimes, and we see the illegal crossing of a sovereign border, this invasion, and we're just screaming, why do this? And how do you reconcile these two very different ideas, these two very different opinions, this Russian and, you know, kind of NATO American alliance view? It's a hard one to try to break down and find the resolution.
Yeah, and Putin's in a position where he can't really stop, because that threatens his sovereignty, which threatens his life potentially. I mean, they're backed into a corner, and so this will probably just drag with potential threats of nuclear action. What are your thoughts on that?
Seeing the Russian soldiers and their equipment, Russian military, you know, they're a third world military with nukes. Third world in the worst of ways. You know, in Africa, genocide happens often. War crimes happen often, and not often do we look down there and be like, that's so terrible. Oh my gosh, the things that happen there. You know, like, it happens in the Middle East, and you don't see us screaming for war crimes and tribunals because it's so frequent. But then it happens to, I mean, let's just say it, to white people in a European city, and oh no, now people have to seek justice for this. It's unfair, but it's because it's happened so rare there. That does happen in third world countries, and Russia, their military have the discipline of a third world country, but they also have nukes. So it's the worst two combination you can possibly have. Third world level discipline, where they're doing crimes against women and children, atrocities, you know, war crimes, genocide, all the while they also have nuclear weapons. So this is a bad combo.
Yeah, really bad. All right, so we just watch and wait, and then obviously it's probably in re-election's interest for the White House to keep us at war, because that probably helps popularity. I've been told the Western media has been given this line of Ukraine's winning, but when I have experts on here, they say that's actually not the case. Do you have a thought on that? Like you said, it is an information war. Everything is, I guess, these days.
Yeah, I mean, define winning. So Ukraine has successfully rebutted an initial invasion of a gigantic, you know, nearly world superpower. And so, like, is that a victory? For sure. You know, at what cost? The Ukrainian military has suffered so many casualties, and you know, like, I'm not going to put numbers out because I actually don't know which ones I'm not supposed to share and I can share. But in percentage wise, in comparison, you know, Russian soldiers have lost such a minute amount of their resources and their actual combat fighters in comparison to Ukraine. Russia can do this for a decade. Ukraine can do this for months, you know, and this long drawn out war is exactly what the Russians want. And for a long drawn out war, the Russians are winning.
Yeah, it's what they do really well, isn't it? And then a bunch of stuff was leaked recently that was kind of maybe telling the truth that the Western media wasn't too happy about, that kind of divulged some things about Ukraine's actual resources. And I think it was a little less than maybe people had talked about or hoped about. And so I guess we'll just see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not wrong. I don't think anybody that isn't, you know, being spoon-fed the truth from whatever news network they're paying attention to. You know, when you start pulling back a couple of layers, and you know, the leaks said that the Ukrainian casualties were higher and the Russian casualties were lower. They're exactly what I just said. The resources that have been spent by Ukraine to fight this initial invasion were much heftier than initially reported. So the flowers and positivity of this is how this war is going, continue for it to go fantastic, especially all through the way of this next presidential election. It's just disingenuous and inaccurate.
You mentioned communism there, which is something that seems to become a popular form of potential government in America with maybe some of the younger folks, that or socialism. Can you just talk about what it's like to hear people having those conversations and be questioning some of the ideas of capitalism? I think you said once that, yeah, in theory, communism sounds great. Everyone has a job, everybody contributes, but you've seen the reality. And the reality is it's mass graves, it's starvation, it's tens of millions of people's killed. I mean, that's what the track record is. Can you just talk about what it's like to be in America now? Are people actually having those conversations? I'm over here, Tim. I don't know. And how do you feel about it? And what's it like?
Yeah, I mean, there are current political congressmen, congresswomen that define their views as socialist. And you said the track record. To be perfectly clear, every single instance where it has been implemented, it has ended with violence and genocide. And so historically, you cannot find a single time where you're like, well, it just wasn't and then the same argument always comes out that, well, it just wasn't applied the correct way. We'll be able to do it better this time. Well, go to Venezuela right now and try to stand in a bread line to get some food. Go to Russia right now, and try to break through the caste system of the oligarchs that are directly connected to the Communist Party. Go to China right now and see if you have any say about your life, especially when they're welding your door closed because you're not going to do the thing that the government is telling you to do. You're going to be trapped in your apartment until you starve to death. That is the power of communism, and it is absolute, controlled by the government. The idea is the opposite for what the United States was founded on, where the control and the power stands on the individual and the people. So the people should always have the preponderance. The people should always have the onus of all responsibility and power should rest upon them, which is why we have our beautiful Constitution, which supports those individually determined powers to the people. The freedom of speech, our right to the Second Amendment, or freedom of the press, our due process, real limited search and seizure. All of these things are not like given to us. These are our unalienable rights. These are our rights as individual, which is opposite from communism, which is the government has all control and all power, and then we give you what we think that you want. Once you see what that looks like in real life, in practice, in a real world, you'll see the depravity, you'll see the egregious, horrific atrocities that happen to humans when a government has all power and people have no say.
And which way is that going in America? Like, are people coming back around to understanding that property rights are important and freedom of speech is important? Or does it feel like you're losing ground? And does it feel like the younger generation is being educated in our schools and universities? By the way, my daughter just started university in Boston, and I'm a bit terrified, Tim, that she's getting brainwashed. But like, are you worried that over time this is going the wrong way, that America's going to believe more in this socialist view?
I mean, it's felt like it's been going this way for a while, and it has felt that this has been a losing battle for a while. The universities and our public school systems, it's been a propaganda machine. That they've been feeding these lies that are not supported by fact or by history about what socialism and communism does. And this utopian idea of, this is what it looks like when it's so inclusive and everybody gets along and everybody has a job and everybody has a standard of living, and the minimum wage is set to a degree where everybody can live. When that happens, it removes any motivation by the individual. And when everybody has the same, no matter how hard you work, everybody has the same outcome, it removes the individual's drive to achieve or succeed at anything. Because I'm going to have whatever substance I'm going to have, and me and my comrades are all going to live the same level. And that makes sense to a lot of people that have no drive. That makes sense to a lot of people that have no initiative. That makes sense to a lot of people that are just lazy. And it's not fair to all of the other brilliant young men and women that want to aspire to do amazing things, that want to innovate, that want to create. And so I feel that our schools have been broken, both our universities and our public school system, for a while. And I don't know which way the ship is going to be turning. I'm fighting as hard as I can to keep it turned towards the direction of freedom, because there's nothing more beautiful than sovereignty of an individual.
And it's not just the socialism, capitalism. It's gone to all sorts of other very strange levels of gender, of, obviously all the issues on the environment, and it's just gone to all sorts of other things. I mean, I think somebody tried to put it in a nutshell, and they said the left inherently hates ourselves, or is this narrative that humans are bad and we're doing the bad things and we need to punish ourselves for being bad? And then kind of the conservatives are more like, no, we're not just bad and we're not necessarily doing the wrong things. We just have to look at it in a different way. First, I thought that was a very simplified way, but the more I think about it, it's like maybe that is closer to being true. I don't know. What do you make of it? Also, I'm watching from over here. It hasn't come here yet, but like the day some teacher comes to come in and start telling my sons that are 5 and 6 that, you know, the man's having the baby and stuff, like I'm pulling them. I'm taking them out. And so, what do you see happening there?
As dangerous as it was to talk about the lab leak, you know, we're saying, you know, if you go back to 2019, 2020, you and I we were so cautiously trying to split hairs about how do we talk about being real, that maybe this horrible virus did come from a lab. We would have been banned off of everything. Yeah, that is almost what it's like. Yeah, to talk about anything trans in the United States right now. You know, if I went to a teacher in California, the parents don't even have a right to know what the teacher is talking to the child about regarding their sexual identity, all the way down to kindergarten. So the parent has no authority to need or want to know. Well, they can want to know. They just won't have the authority to find out what the teacher is saying to the child or what the child is saying to the teacher about their sexual identity. That is insanity. That is absolute bigotry, and that is, in my opinion, grooming. So we are, and it is one of many topics. You talked about the environment, you know, the current religion of wokeism to include transgender, all of the things. Basic common sense from history and science have just been thrown out the window for whatever you want to believe is the truth and your new reality. That's fine. You can believe whatever you want to believe. That's the cool thing about being American is you can have the freedom to have those own thoughts and those own opinions, but you don't get to tell me what to think. And I know that biologically we got 2 genders, and I don't care what you think you are. You can believe that, and I'll respect that, and I'll treat you like a human, and I'll love you regardless as my neighbor. I'll mow your lawn if you need help. You know, if you want me to do whatever you need, I'll support you to do that. But you do not get to project that onto me or my family as to what my freedoms get to be. And we have definitely, the pendulum has swung so far into this radical idea that it is, people are speaking out, and laws are starting to be passed. And most important, parents are starting to fight back. They're going to school unions. They're pulling their kids from schools. They're starting private schools, and they're doing everything within their powers to compete against these radical ideas that are bad for the family and they're bad for the kids.
Well, it's good to hear there's some fighting back going on. I know, well, you had been starting Apogee on our last conversation, I think 3 years ago. I want to get an update on how that's going. But like you said it perfectly there. I think in America, we've always believed that everyone has the choice to be who they want to be, whatever you want to be. But when you start trying to project those ideas onto our children and us, and I guess our children were super sensitive because they can be shaped really well. When you're trying to project those, that's when people stand up. But I guess their argument is, oh, now you're discriminating me. And that's the way they try to hide behind that. And it sounds like they've ridden that pretty far in some states. And you're just coming out and saying, no, it's not that, but you can't push these agendas if that's not what I want for my children.
Yeah, that's right. You know, and not what I want. It's also what the children want. You know, they're saying, you know, a 6, 7, 8-year-old that's like, oh, a little girl is like, man, I think I'm a boy. And, you know, we start giving them chemical castrations and puberty blockers because this little girl that could also say she's a unicorn wants to be something. That's the beautiful thing about being a parent is they can have any beliefs and they can be swayed and persuaded in any direction because they're so impressionable and they're so beautifully innocent that is why it is the job of a responsible parent and a responsible adult to protect these children. Just like a kid will run out into the street, just like we won't let them buy alcohol in the United States until they're 21. They're not allowed to vote until they're 18. But they can make a decision about permanently mutilating their body. It makes no sense. And it makes no sense in such a damning and damaging way to these children and to their mental health for their life moving forward, because these are irreversible things. There's no common sense human on the planet that would look at a young child that's, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. And it's like, man, I think I'm going to be, this specific gender. I'm going to make this permanent decision right now. And you're going to be like, that's a great plan. Let's do that. I'm going to give you, a surgery and chemicals to facilitate that. No, what we're going to do is we're going to wait until your frontal lobe fully develops. We're going to wait for you to get healthy in your own skin and figure out what you want to do. Maybe get through these crazy hormones of puberty and then maybe start making some decisions. And it is so evil. It's just evil what we've been doing to children for the past few years. And it's everywhere. Disney puts it in their cartoons. Bud Light puts it on their cans. That's bad move, Anheuser-Busch. But you've seen it everywhere. It's just been this constant assault on rational, logical thought.
Yeah, I've seen it in the movies. I saw the Nike thing. I saw the Bud Light thing. I mean, again, over here, that hasn't hit Britain. They say it won't, but I don't know. We usually about 5 years behind you guys. But it's just so hard for me to watch and believe it. I mean, look, America is filled with intelligent people, people that were born in this country with this multiple hundred years of value. Do you ever think, Tim, how can these people think something that seems so illogical? Do you ever try to put yourself in their shoes and say, how can that happen? Is it because they've been divided into this team and they all subconsciously just choose the same values and they have to fight? Have you ever thought about that? Because it just doesn't even make sense to me sometimes.
Yeah, I've thought a lot, Brian. Just who the hell was Hitler? Who was this dude? This absolute asshole that, in the early 30s was able to sway an entire nation to go on to commit genocide, and to conduct the Holocaust, where a nation stood behind them. The SS, to be like, yeah, it's all right for us to go into Poland and for us to create entire blocks where we start murdering people in the streets, throwing them onto trains, where they go gas them and burn them. But a country was behind them for that to happen. What was it that allowed this mass psychosis of people to go with something that was so illogical, that was something that was so inhumane? What was this thing? And we've seen it time and time again. We've seen it throughout history, over and over and over, where we have accepted these radical, dangerous ideas and we've allowed them to happen. And this mass psychosis happened during COVID, and it's happening right now, where a small group of radical ideas have perpetuated and made they've permeated their way into regular society. And I cannot understand how it happened in the 30s, where then we saw the Holocaust in the 40s, how we saw the Cold War that went, from the 60s all the way through the 90s. These were radical ideas that brought us to the brink of war. I've never seen America so divided in my lifetime, and divided over the dumbest stuff. We're divided over the dumbest things right now, as we're looking at World War III, where we're losing ground to China, while we have our southern border that is currently being invaded by absolutely everybody on the planet. But then we're arguing over about a rainbow on a beer can. Wake up, America. It's time for us just to get back together and realize that we are and have been the most powerful country for the past 100 years. And let's come together and figure out how to continue to make this world a more peaceful and prosperous place.
Yeah, it is a mass psychosis. And I guess you could go deep on it and find out why it happens. Sometimes people are scared to speak out of it, because then they're going to lose their group of friends if they try to be rational. Then it goes into your subconscious brain to where you just believe it. And then you end up choosing red or blue. And then you just simultaneously adopt 99% of those policies without giving it your own thought. I guess there is a history of this, right? But it's weird to see it play out. Maybe America needs a common enemy once again to wake up, because China's coming to eat everybody's lunch, and it's already doing it. And winning, yeah.
Yeah, they're winning.
They're already winning, and they got a long timeline, and they're going to grind away here, and it's not looking good with the current divisions. Not very good at all.
No. We got to get our act together.
Does it need a common enemy? Would that even do it?
I mean, Japan knew in 1940 that to be very careful not to wake the sleeping giant that is the American people. And then Pearl Harbor happened, and they were like, oh, we messed up, man. Boy, did we mess up, and two nuclear bombs, 2 atomic bombs later, and us beating them all the way back to Tokyo through every single island throughout the entire Pacific. That is what happens when you push the sleeping giant too far. We have been so comfortable. We have gotten so lazy. We have gotten so fat. We've gotten so gelatinous. We've gotten so obese. We've gotten so careless about protecting our freedoms. We've been giving them away for convenience for the past 30 years. At every opportunity for a little bit of security and a little bit of convenience, I'll just give up absolutely everything. I remember my grandma taking her phone off the hook and unplugging it before we talked about the president in any way, shape, or form. And now our phones listen to us 24/7. We're being fed ads, and we've just accepted that there's actually no presence of privacy or security in any element of our life. I have not accepted this because I still remember what it feels like to have sovereignty, both technologically and of my mind, where I'm not being advertised and being fed propaganda from every single source, whether it's a private corporate entity or the government that's telling me what I need to be thinking about what's best for me and my family. Last time that happened, no French, Brian, but we went and picked up muskets and we fought every single person that was not aligned with these ideas of freedom off of our shores. So not to go like 1776, but don't push America too far over freedom. But we've been giving it up inch by inch for the past 30, 40 years.
Yeah, and COVID was a little microcosm of that, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to take a little bit of your freedom away. I'm going to take a little bit more. Well, I don't want to start a problem. I guess I'll just go along. I'll go along. And then you wake up, a year later and you're like, oh, what the hell just happened? I gave up everything. Now you have my health. Now you have me doing stupid things. Now you have my kids scared. And then it's easier to do the next time.
That's right.
That's the microcosm. Now you look at the last 20 years of America, and then it's like, it's gonna get easier and easier. Talk about the overweight. Talk about the lethargic, because that's going into your military. And you posted something recently that said the military standards have dropped because they can't get enough recruits that don't have this 36% body fat or less for men. Yeah, I mean, that's your military, Tim. What's happening there? What do you see?
Yeah, so currently we have the lowest eligibility of Americans that could serve in the military. So we are whether it's drug use, criminal records, or their health. It's mostly, the vast majority of it is their health. They're not even eligible to serve. So because of that, because our population of eligible soldiers, airmen, Marines, to be in the military is so small, the Air Force is the only one to do it. The Army and the Marines and the Navy, I don't think would ever lower standards. I was very surprised to see that the Air Force did it. But that is exactly what they did, Brian. They lowered the body fat, the BMI level of who's allowed to be in the military. They lowered it so they would accept a fatter soldier because so much of America is fat. And it's damaging us in every way. When you're obese, and I'm not fat shaming and whatever health situation you're in, I will love you. But we can also, just like there's a man and a woman, there is healthy and there is unhealthy. And being obese is unhealthy. Being obese is the main indicator for almost every single health concern that can give you early death, from cardiovascular, from even mental health, to carcinogens, your likelihood to have cancer. All of these things are impacted by obesity. You want your insurance claims to go down? Be a healthier society. You want us to spend less money on our military? Be a healthier society. We as a society are the least healthy that we have ever been in our country's history. And it is bad.
And gross. How do you change that? If it is, it's probably not you, because you literally try to kill yourself every day with your CrossFit workouts and training to get Rory you were training on his last fight, and like all the crazy stuff you do at Roca and everywhere else. Like the average American, why is it going the other way? Is it because these corporations come up with the next food product that's bad for us? They come up with the next thing where you don't have to move a muscle even to get to your car. Like, what is it? Is it that? Both of those things happening?
I mean, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I don't think there's a single indicator. There's not a single data point for us to point to be like, this is the reason why America got so fat. Your diet has a big part to it. We have, as a society, it's gotten very comfortable. You know, we've been a very successful company for a very long time now. So with prosperity comes convenience. You don't have to do the hard work that we were accustomed to earlier, you know, building bridges and building buildings, you know, during the Industrial Revolution. So, and we've also just got lazy. We're lazy. And there's nothing good that comes from being lazy. And